why the title, Covenant Marriage
Yeah, that's
Conference?
a
Why
great,
covenant?
That's a great question
Thank
because
you, Craig.
because another reason is because we're focusing on the concept of covenant, and we
Yeah.
were talking earlier about what are the things that we consistently find are difficulties in marriage around the world, and the exchange of values from that of covenant, as marriage being a covenant to marriage being a contract, is happening worldwide. We're seeing that degradation or degeneration of value all around, where covenant is an unconditional, unilateral type of agreement that depicts the relationship that God has with us, which is unconditional. And we find that degrading into a 50-50 contract type of concept.
Yeah.
If you do what you say, then I will do what I say. But if you don't, then I'm released. I'm out of here. I'm going to go do something else.
Yeah.
And we've named the conference Covenant Marriage Conference or Covenant Marriage Retreat because we found that the first step to creating a security within a marriage is putting the protective hedge of covenant back around that marriage, where you have both a husband and wife committed to an ongoing relationship where they're both fighting for us instead of each one fighting for self.
The whole concept of covenant feels like it's so old.
Right.
It's so like, oh, you're so out of touch.
Yeah.
Like get with it. We're in the 21st century, Craig. It's so irrelevant culture.
Right.
To our culture right now, this word covenant.
Yeah. I think the fact of what a covenant actually is, when people understand that, they realize that this is a foundational principle like gravity. You can say gravity is old. Do we really need to obey the law of gravity in the 21st century? I mean, it's been around for a long time. People have been talking about it. And you can say, well, a person doesn't have to believe in gravity. A person doesn't even have to obey the law of gravity, but there's some pretty serious consequences when you violate it. And I think this is what we're finding in marriages. People are actually believing, well, covenant is irrelevant, and we don't really need to embrace that. The problem is there are consequences to doing that are very similar to jumping off a cliff when a person says, well, I think the concept of gravity is irrelevant. And there are basic life principles like that, like gravity, electricity, that you can't change.
And what happens here is that for the individual or for the couple or family that experience a divorce,
Right.
it's like they jumped off the cliff and experienced gravity.
True.
For them, it's immediate devastation.
Sure.
Okay? But here's what we have. We have an entire generation or two that have walked off the edge, and now we have a society that's bankrupt.
Yeah.
And the home is broken.
Well, and I think what people are not realizing is that there are generational consequences to that.
Right.
When people are making a choice for their own happiness in their generation, they don't realize that when they break covenant, and maybe multiple times for some people, that they're releasing a seed of destruction and devastation into the lives of their children that's going to perpetuate itself and do what seed always does, which is multiply in intensity.
After its own kind.
After its own kind in the next generation. And I find that many people, sadly, after a couple decades, discover that with their children rather than realizing, oh, there is a consequence to this I need to take stock of.
Yeah.
And covenant is actually a protective hedge for generations.
Yeah. Craig, today we heard a testimony. A woman came up and she said, at 36 years old, my parents divorced.
Right.
And she's weeping
Right.
at the brokenness, of her parents' divorce at 36 years old.
Exactly.
My parents divorced when I was 21, 22.
Yeah.
It's devastating.
Yeah.
And it impacted my children.
Right.
They didn't have a grandma and grandpa to go to. It is so affecting our generations.
That's very true.
More than we realize.
No, that's very true.
Yeah.